So imagine a quiet time, a peaceful time. Maybe you're burning sage or an incense candle. Maybe you're outside or in your private space where you can really be thoughtful, where you can really be meditative. We're in the new year and people begin to evaluate the upcoming year with hopefulness and various ideas such as that. Well, we've got an awesome show for you today where we're going to really dig into the alternative medicines with energy healing and breathing practices and some really, really neat things with a person who has agreed to join our show this afternoon. More on that in a little bit. She is a highly trained therapist that really goes with a lot of neat things, not just traditional therapy. So I'm really going to be interested to talk with Miss Casey Stevens in a little bit. But I am Chris Gazdick and he is Craig Graves. I'm a mental health and substance abuse therapist, and he is an Unbeatable Mind coach. We have a book that's available on the Kindle version, Through a Therapist's Eyes, Re-Understanding Emotions and Becoming Your Best Self. Craig, you have a website, wininyourmind.com, where you can contact him, receive articles and such from him, and possibly coaching, as you can see people all over the nation. Is that right?
That is correct.
And you can see people all over the world, actually. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
It trips me out, man. It does. It trips me out. So see the world through the lens of a therapist and a coach, being aware it's not delivery of therapy services in any way. Check out our website, throughatherapist'seyes.com, where you get full show transcriptions. Books that we've talked about on the show are available there. The counseling link for better help. Craig, this is the human emotional experience, energy and whatnot, this show. Let's figure this thing out together.
Sounds good. I'm excited, man.
I am too. Let's start out this show, actually, Craig. Just kind of asking you. Let me sort of tickle your brain a little bit with, like, what. Listen, onions. This is an actual particular show that I'm going to be learning a lot right along with you. I've kind of been exposed to some of the concepts we're going to be talking about here with alternative energy and whatnot, alternative medicines and breathing, obviously, and some things like that. But there's some stuff that I'm not really aware of, like shamanism and theta healing. And Craig, I knew you were going to be interested in transpersonal breath work, somatic psychology, and somatic reintegration breath work. Like, that's a mouthful, right?
Yeah, it is a mouthful.
What do you know about all that? What's your brain do with all that kind of stuff when you think of energy healing and energy practices? I know that you have some experiences with it.
Most of my experiences with energy healers have been on a physical level. I have recently been working with somebody who does more emotional type healing on an energy realm, but like I said, most of mine is in the physical realm. And when you talk about shamans, Chris, I always think about psychedelics first thing. So right. I'm interested to hear if Casey has any thoughts on psychedelics and healing.
That's cool. Yeah, we got a show coming up on that, man. It's been sitting on my desk forever, man. I know
you need to get that one going.
I
want to do that one.
I've been reserving it. I don't know why I've been reserving it. It's funny. I got a few clients and whatever that I keep on getting articles on this thing, and they keep on giving me articles. I'm like, I got like 20 articles on this thing now. I need to get that guy going. I don't know why I haven't. There really isn't any reason for that. But so Craig, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being know a lot, 1 being know very little, I'm just curious where you'd put yourself.
Oh man, it'd be low. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Casey, welcome to Through a Therapist's Eyes. You're going to have to help us out. We don't know anything.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's a privilege to be here. So.
Yeah. Well, welcome. Let me kind of line up what we've got, Craig, here with Miss Casey Stevens, right? First of all, it's funny, the professional boards and certifications and the letter alphabets that we have, right? Every state's different. So you got to tell us what MS and MFT and CCHT and MCC are. Those are your credentials.
Yeah, thanks. So I just have a master's of science, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And then in Washington State here where I live, and then I'm a certified clinical hypnotherapist, and I am also a master coach. So all of those things.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I think that's, I want to learn a lot from you, honestly, in this topic, because it's kind of fascinating to me where you do it seems like a really cool combination of, traditional therapy, just everything that, we know about CBD and, mindfulness. And, as a matter of fact, Craig, I saw in her bio, she's totally down on the Gottman folks. Remember the emotion focused therapy?
Cool.
Yeah. So you use a lot of that with couples counseling?
I do. Yeah. I mean, I really blend such a hybrid, but yeah. And the Gottmans are from right here in Seattle. So I've been fortunate to do, several trainings with them. So.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool. So you met them live?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I'm jealous of you. I didn't know they were from your area.
Yeah. They're from Seattle. Well, kind of the greater Seattle area. So yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna have to come up and see you guys then, man.
Yeah, Casey.
I was just going to say the Love Lab that they created was right here. I mean, a few blocks from me at actually my undergrad alma mater. So.
Oh, fantastic. You know what she means by Love Lab, Craig? Yeah, that was kind of, I feel like that's where John got his start. John Gottman was the guy, and he put a lot of science on this thing, and he called it the Love Lab, and just had, like, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of couples that kind of just sat down and, and dealt with, he observed them while they were talking and began to like measure their blood pressures and measure their tear ducts even, and all the stuff, and kind of figured out what gets the amygdala fired up and how it works. So that was like 2 blocks from you. That is totally cool.
A time ago that he started all of that, but he actually set up apartments for couples to live in where he tracked them over in their natural-ish habitat. So, and that's how he measured all of that quantitative. Yeah. Really cool stuff.
That's cool.
What were you going to say, Craig?
I've learned a lot, Casey, from doing this show for the past couple years with Chris, but that's been one of the most fascinating things to me. The whole EFT, abandonment, engulfment, how people act and how they're wired is a fascinating thing. And that's just been a cool thing for me to learn.
Yeah. And
so I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that I find that men are particularly drawn to the Gottman, that quantifiable, like the facts, the data, like they love that, I mean, we all do. Yeah.
Well, yeah, a therapist friend of mine, local, we were talking about it, and she made the point that honestly, when you start describing those cycles that people get into, they're kind of just amazed at, like, wow, like, how are you in our house? Like, because it's a real reality and very common. So it's like, it's almost relieving, like, okay, so there's a thing, and by the way, there's something we can do about it. Anyway, more on that later, I guess. In way of introducing Casey, I kind of found that, like I said before, a highly trained traditional therapist, but with the added benefit of many trainings and professionalism in non-traditional healing practices. And I want to hear a lot about that. But right from your website, right, is where I kind of got some stuff that helped me understand what you're about. And I thought you have a really cool description, and I don't know, you don't have to share anything you don't want to, but as far as what your personal experiences were, but you allude to it here when you say many years ago during a transition period in my own life, I was sitting in my therapist's office when I realized my dharma. All right. I was called to spend my life's work helping people heal. When I told my dear healer, that was a tongue twister, Craig. When I told my dear healer about my inner musing, she simply said, I've just been waiting for you to say that. So the rest is history. After that, I went to work learning my craft in a special and deliberate way. I graduated with a master's in science and psychology and marriage and family therapy, as you said before, with the letter alphabet behind your name, right? Became a master certified Gestalt coach. Gestalt therapy is really neat stuff. We've talked about that. I had some Gestalt training myself. But additionally, accumulated more than 30 different holistic and traditional trainings and accreditations. That's a lot. That's a lot of certifications. And are you certified in all those things, actually?
Well, I mean, some are just trainings that you do, and some don't necessarily offer certification, but they're training. So if there's something I could be certified in, then I got certified in it. So I just seem to be a seeker. Love learning and understanding, different modalities and ways of operating. So I tend to just gobble them up.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. Well, and now you get to spit them out, right?
Hopefully, I'll do my best.
Yeah. So let's dig into that a little bit. What are these things? I mean, it's funny because some of these things, when I looked on your sites and was kind of getting to know you from afar that way, I mean, there are some things that you do that I kind of totally get and totally understand. And then there's a lot of things that you do that honestly, I feel like I know very little, if anything, about. And so that's what I'm going to be interested to learn. And audience, forgive me if I'm obvious about that. I mean, I may guide and steer our conversation towards some of the things selfishly I want to hear about. Can I do that, Craig?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that I don't have to feel guilty about that.
I think if you have questions, we're all going to have the same ones, or at least some flavor thereof.
Right. So, the ones that I kind of understand a little bit about, a little bit more than the others. Let me see, where's my list? Yeah, more familiar things. So hypnotherapy, you kind of get into doing that. Being the Reiki master, neuro-linguistic programming, and mindful meditation practices. I can honestly say I don't use a lot of those things, though I'm more familiar with them. For instance, like hypnotherapy. And I kind of find that, I do a lot of guided imagery with people and, do some visualization and, manage anxiety with that kind of thing. But tell us a little bit about more of the traditional things like that. Those ones, mindfulness, of course, we all use a lot of that. What do you do with Reiki and hypnotherapy and some of the linguistic stuff? What are those things for our audience?
Yeah, well, I'll do my best to explain. So hypnotherapy is essentially accessing like the subconscious mind. And so and to me, though, a lot of people might do it and read scripts. I don't do that. To me, it's taking somebody, like inducing somebody into that subliminal state. And then from there, we can pull out, I guess, subconscious patterns and deeper understanding and have access to parts of us that wouldn't otherwise be available from our conscious mind. So it's one great way to do that. There are many others though. So, and then, okay. So then you asked me about Reiki. So that is a energy technique that I got, trained and certified in, obviously, where we're using our hands or our energy field to induce with symbols. It's almost like, how do I best describe this? It's anointing. It's using the power that really it's not you. It's like channeling it through like your source and the earth and connecting all of those. And then you can release it through your hands or even just, it's mostly in your hands. I have come up with a really kind of intuitive way of practicing because I don't touch my clients. So it's not hands-on healing for me, but you can do distance healing. So it doesn't really matter where you are in the world. You can still receive the healing because energy is everything. So I forget what the one you asked me about was.
But the linguistic stuff. But I guess I'm kind of just honing in on some of the things that I kind of have heard a little bit about and kind of understand a little bit about. And then I kind of want to focus on some of the ones that I'm just not like. I got like a second list for you. But I guess right off the get-go, I kind of want to make the point. For folks that are listening, like this is not frou-frou stuff. Like some people are kind of like, oh, I've tuned out. Like I don't know what this all is. I'm not talking about crystals and healing and weird energy folk thing. How can we kind of ground this for people to, how do I want to put that? Get kind of a grounding understanding of how this can really be applicable to somebody and how it operates in, just the day to day. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So, I do come from this real like critical thinking, like grounded, like intellectual understanding human behavior. That's a huge part of who I am. And then I believe we are souls. We are like our truest essence is, our soul and this other kind of intangible part of ourselves that really I think is the bigger part, like our vessel, our body, our, place, that we show up, in life and walk through life with is just a messenger and a tool, I think, to access this bigger part. I believe this, I think, more meaningful, more valuable, qualitative part of us that is our heart. It's our soul. It's our, so many aspects of our spiritual body, right? Understanding the meaning in all things. And so I would say grounding it, the way I practice is completely with accountability and responsibility. And so I want people to have the agency to, if these things don't quite make sense, it's like, okay, well, how do you embody it? How do you take things and embody it? How do you understand what you are feeling, what you are thinking, what that sign is going on? Like, why is my stomach upset when this thing just happened? Like really understanding these messengers that show up in this vessel, but really they're guided from a different place. So
yeah, I guess that's what I meant, right? Like, we did a show on nutrition, And one of the things that I remember very clearly that the expert there was kind of talking about, who was that, Craig? Was that Dennis? That was exercise. Who was talking about nutrition?
I don't recall.
That's bothering me. I don't either. Yeah, well, exactly it was. Thank you, Neil. Neil points out it was Claire when we were talking about nutrition. And one of the things that she really made a big point about, because she's a nurse practitioner and she's kind of working with people, just medically.
Yeah.
She should pay attention, right? Like pay attention to what's going on with your body. When you eat this is what happens. When you do that, this is the result. And I feel like when I'm talking about being grounded with our energy, our mind, body, and spirit, right? Like that's all a part of us. I think we operate and we don't realize it. I guess in my more traditional sense, I would call it the subconscious, in the traditional psychology fields, right?
Okay.
So yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I call it that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that people kind of, what I want to get across here is when we're dealing with these energies and the healing and being aware and feeling, grounded, it's kind of like pulling all that together to understand kind of what's going on in and around your spirit almost.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it shows up in your body. It shows up in all of the layers. Some of them scream a little louder. So it's being able to listen and interpret and understand ourselves so that we can frankly be grounded and empowered in not reacting to something, which would be our subconscious, but responding to something when we're consciously aware and want to interrupt patterns that are non-productive, right? So yeah, it's about taking action and having agency, and you are responsible. Like we each are responsible for the energy we carry into the room.
Yeah. I mean, Craig, I'm kind of curious. I've thought about it. To me, a lot of this, if I were to ever really access a lot of it, wouldn't be through Reiki practices or really even hypnotherapy. I've chosen not to really implement that in my practice, but a lot of it would be martial arts, like I've always been fascinated with that. And I know you do a lot of jiu-jitsu, but you haven't really talked about that part of it, the spirit and the energy and, kind of the process of being grounded in the emotional pieces of martial art. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Is there a question there?
Well, the question is, how do you guys do that? In jiu-jitsu, how do you wrap that into, your practice and your exercise and your work?
Yeah, from in my jiu-jitsu practice, I wouldn't say that we do. We do keep focus on the breath to try to maintain our emotional state and physical state when we're actually in a grappling match. But as far as energies and those kind of things, it's not really something that we discuss.
That's what I kind of figure. That's what I thought, right? Do other martial arts do that?
So I think some do. I think some are more along the lines of traditional martial arts, which I would say are breathing and meditation practices and those kind of things. But some don't. They're more sport. They're focused on competition.
And that's more jiu-jitsu, right?
Jiu-jitsu, yeah, but there's some of the greatest jiu-jitsu guys ever. Like Hickson Gracie is a yogi. Yeah. And he also does this very interesting breath practice where he pulls his stomach into his spine. It's really amazing to watch him do it. And, he's like, I would say that a guy like him is a real martial artist. There's a guy named Jean-Jacques Machado who's the same way.
So I guess, Casey, what I'm trying to do with that is kind of, for people that are interested in this and learning about what is this kind of stuff, in my mind, some of what you would see with martial arts and some of what you try to practice, in that, would you say that's pretty consistent with trying to get grounded and understand your body and your healing and your energy and whatnot? I mean, that's what I was after there.
Yeah, I love your question. And I'm just kind of laughing inside when I'm listening because I mean, that is like channeled embodiment. That is you. I'm sure, Craig, when you're practicing, there are other, Qigong. I mean, it's like channeling your energy. And what I want to invite people to think about is like, I imagine it's a great, and of course I haven't done jiu-jitsu, but I can imagine, right? It's the embodiment of us and in knowing that we are consciously channeling that in a productive way or in a healthy way or in a meditative way or in a, healing way. It's like we're channeling that energy. And so it's bringing conscious awareness to the fact that whether you've spoken about the fact that there's energy in your practice there is. And so understanding that just from an even deeper, like, it's like opening our mind to understand, like, wow, this is what I'm doing. And this is a beautiful practice that I can do, right? It might be jujitsu for you. It might be meditation or yoga for someone else. It might be Qigong. It might be, I mean, there's so many ways. It might be going on a walk in nature, right? But am I doing that from a place where, I'm all over the board. I'm just completely unconscious about, oh, I didn't even notice that happen. I'm not noticing my steps. It's like, how do we bring a mindfulness and frankly, an awareness to the things that we do so we can have greater outcomes?
Yeah, I'm glad you put it that way, because for me, it is, the nature in walking. I mean, that's my thing. Like, yeah. Oh my gosh, I think I'm going to do it. I was just debating in my head for the last 7 to 8 seconds. Like, do I want to reveal that or not? But I think I'm going to. It was funny, man. Because what's that?
I said, go for it. We love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Here I go. So there was one time, probably not too long ago, actually. I guess it's been a few years, but as far as dealing with your energy and being, grounded with things and being, it was, so there was something that was really seriously bothering me. I was worked up about it. And as I do many times, I like to hike. That's my thing, is getting into nature. And I love water and being with the nature. And I've always had fish, but this particular thing, I was worked up. I was really upset and I was having a hard time. And I went up to a local, you can call it a mountain. It's a pretty big hill, Cooper's Mountain, or God, what is it called, Craig?
Crowder's Mountain.
Crowder's Mountain. Cooper's actually West Virginia. Cooper's Rock is in West Virginia. Anyway, I went up to Crowder's Mountain. I hiked this mountain. I went up to the top of it, and I literally laid under a rock for probably, I don't know, I decided I was just going to lay there and just ponder and just be protected by the mountain in a way. I mean, I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I did that, and it really helped.
No, Chris, it doesn't sound crazy. Like, this is like, there's some wise part of you, like an intuitive part that knew you needed, like, to me, that just screams you needed grounding, and you might not have consciously known it, but it's.
Oh, I did. Yeah, I definitely did.
Yeah, knowing that the feeling of that, literally, I mean, you're laying down on the earth or the stones that are made up of the earth, right? I mean, this is like an organic process that we connect to the elements and understand what they are giving us, right? There's electricity probably coming up, really holding you and pulling you in. And these are the things, they're the simple things, but it is the simple things, right? It's the little things that knowing ourselves, like, it's a beautiful example of that. So not crazy.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And it's funny because I've even, we're going to go into a few things that I don't know much about, that I'm be curious. Maybe we spend a couple minutes on each of them just to get grounded with what it is that those things are. But I think big picture with this, and I feel like just the way that our bodies work, just our neurology. Anybody that's listened to the show for any amount of time knows I've been kind of fascinated this past year or two with neurology. It's been something that I've really wanted to get an understanding of, and we've had a couple of awesome guests about that. Wow. Like, our brains are electricity. Like, there are minerals in our body. Like, our organic functioning is like, I mean, we're not robots because we have a spirit and a soul. A lot of people believe, if you have religion in place at all. But I mean, like there is literally electricity playing out. Like, the moon plays with the water cells in our body, I think, right? Like, there's incredible science that we're learning about this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, even again, these are Eastern practices and not things that I'm necessarily trained in. Well, I do tapping, which is EFT, but it's the meridians that run through our body, right? Acupuncture, like, it's so fascinating, right? So.
Yeah, go ahead. I was listening. We were just figuring out the lights.
It is fascinating.
Okay.
I think a lot of the things that we're talking about, people may think it's woo woo or whatever, but it really is true. Everything has a frequency. I saw a thing recently on YouTube. I'm not sure if it was Greg Braden or somebody like that. I don't know if you know who Greg Braden is.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But it was a picture of space, and you see stars and you see the darkness or whatever. And then they used a different kind of lens that would pick up on the energy, and you could see it. And so the black was actually, there was energy between the stars. There was no black. It was all filled in with this color of the energy. So it's definitely science-based, you know, that
you're talking about dark energy and stuff like that.
I'm just talking about the lens that you showed the energy. The first one was just a picture like you could take with your phone. But
right.
The second one actually showed the energy and all those stars. There was energy in between all the stars, and all that space was not black. There was energy between.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about. And I love how stuff works and some cool geeky science shows. And what you're talking about is actually, if you think about the way that we exist here, okay, or we realize that there's air we're breathing and everything, you would think that, okay, well, the mass of the things that are in this room is like the couch and the floor and the computer that we're looking at and whatnot. And people may not have realized, like, the vast amount of mass is actually in the air.
Yeah.
So that the things we see with stars and planets is the mass in the universe, but we're finding and learning there's way more material and mass and everything all in the middle of it. It's like the ocean.
Right.
Like how much of the ocean is fish and how much of the ocean is water.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, actually, Casey, as we're talking about that in sort of a science way, how much is a part of the practice that you do with these energy healing alternative Eastern philosophies a part of that? Like, is science catching up with what we've done?
Well, I believe so. I mean, I believe that we live in this, to your point about Greg Braden, I don't know that particular picture you're talking about, but I can tune into it, right? Because we live in this quantum universe. And so that's physics. It is science. Like we can track and get into the weeds about all of that. But I mean, I also think like the data lives in us, so we can listen, and messages for you might be different than messages for me, like internally, right? Sign symbols, whatever, how they show up in our body, in this energy system, in our physical, presence. And we can feel those shifts. We can understand because, it moves through us. So I guess tuning in and being more conscious of what that is, or what our connection is to the stars, or what our connection is to, whatever, like the moon cycles, or all of those things are very real. And most of the time we're just walking through, most of us are, or I should say a lot of us are walking through just unconscious of those connections. But if you really dial in, right, there's evidence of it everywhere.
And that's, I think, the point, right? You mentioned the moon. Well, how about the sun? Like, we know that depression that people feel has a seasonal affective component. It's called seasonal affective disorder, right? Like, that's the sun, and the sun's energy, literally with like vitamins and minerals in our body that are operational, from like I kind of make the joke with people when I'm working on seasonal affective stuff: eat a banana and get some exercise, right? While getting some ultraviolet light. Like, that three combination absolutely makes an impact with the way that you feel.
I love that you bring up that point, because so much of even just my holistic approach is like, okay, are we as practitioners, healers, coaches, whatever, are we asking the questions about like our basic body? Like, if something feels off, okay, what's it trying to tell us? Is it trying to tell us that we need to eat a banana and have a, walk and get vitamin D? Like, really listening to those signs on a practical level too. Like, this isn't just all like up in the cosmos, like woo-woo stuff. It's
right.
It's okay. How do we listen to the messages that we might need? Like, well, maybe it's telling you that your diet is poor. Maybe it's telling you you're not getting enough exercise. Maybe it's telling you that this interpersonal relationship is damaging to you. Like, what are expanders and what are contractors? And so tuning into that and, becoming more attuned to that in a way that we are mindful and conscious, to me, is everything.
Yeah. Well, let's this is probably unfair to do, but let me try to do this with a list of a few of these things. And I want to ask you, kind of, if you're able to, in like a sentence or two, tell us like what these things are, because these things I don't know what are. Okay. So, comprehensive energy psychology.
Well, let's back up. Can we back up a minute?
Okay, sure. Absolutely.
Can we do the same thing with hypnotherapy, Reiki, NLP, mindfulness meditation? So, like, what is hypnotherapy? When I think about, do you hypnotize people? I think about the guy holding, "You're getting sleepy."
I'm laughing because
is that how that works?
I'm laughing because you remember when I started the show, I said, I know all those things. I'm not worried about those things. I'm worried about the ones I don't know.
Well, I don't think everybody does. And I know more about some of these than I do others.
Let's go the whole list then. Yes.
But maybe just, how does hypnotherapy work, Casey?
Yeah, like I said, I would do some kind of an induction, which is almost like it's meditational, it's a guide, but it's all channeled and organic. Like I'm not reading from anything. And so it's a blending, right, of entering into the subconscious mind with thought therapy, right? So people remember everything that they talk about. Nothing is ever,
Okay.
your soul, your highest self doesn't forget or doesn't say things you don't want to say, right? But we go in, and symbology is really important too. So we might find like, okay, well, what's in that unconscious mind? That might be a trauma, it might be a pattern, it might be a past life, frankly. I mean, it could be anything that it's just we can access and understand, well, why am I doing the thing that I'm doing that's not productive? And how do I find solutions and healing for that? And so it's to me, I think it's a beautiful way of frankly having a therapeutic conversation with somebody. If you ask questions because you never want to insert in your own opinion or your own thought. So it's just really asking, I think, questions, the appropriate questions to help people access that part of their unconscious that they haven't yet seen or understood, so that you can then put together. I mean, it's visual, it's kinesthetic, it's auditory, it's like having this whole, it's an amazing kind of film play out that then you get to take and keep and understand, like, whoa, I just saw this part of me, or that wasn't what I thought that it was. And so, and then you have it, like you have this movie that is like imprinted into your mind's eye that is yours forever.
Oh, interesting. So the person does remember what's going on. They're not like, okay.
Yeah.
Hypnotherapy is really pretty cool. I've done some trainings on it, and and observed it and how it works. I mean, like she said, it's really kind of just tapping into your subconscious mind.
I didn't know if it was like hypnosis where you see these funny things going on, and
it's that too.
Jumping on one leg and barking like a dog.
It's literally that too. Like you can induct somebody into a hypnotic trance. But the funny thing is, I learned when you're doing hypnotherapy, like you can't do anything they wouldn't be willing to do otherwise. And so when you're hypnotized, you're totally aware and in control. But you literally can eat an onion and believe under hypnosis that it's an apple.
Wow.
Right. It's the subconscious is a very powerful thing that we tap into.
That's cool.
And like, how many steps you've ever walked in your life.
Yeah.
Like the number.
Really?
It's just crazy things like that. Yeah. It's neat. When you get into the subconscious mind. Yeah. This is going to be impossible, but if we go down through all of these, but let's try. What about Reiki? What is that with being a Reiki master?
Yeah, so I was kind of describing it earlier. It is really like a channeling of energy, like through source, through God, through like the universal energy or whatever you want to call that, right? We always like to be respectful to everyone and their beliefs. So it's kind of channeling, I would say, up, and it's channeling all the way through you and then down. It's a grounded process where then we are pulling the energy and we can deliver it. We can send it through distance with our hands, right? Because if we're channeling that, and of course, it's only like for the highest light energy that comes in, right? Like it's really just beautiful, pure, like source energy. And we can use it and it's really powerful, right? Like whether you're doing it in your mind's eye or you've been trained to the symbols, for me, I use a lot of intuitive symbols that I channel, and I'm, blessing my space between clients coming in, or I'm sending that energy to them. They might not know it. I'm, blessing the place that they would sit, blessing my own space so that I'm does that make sense? It's
absolutely.
Yeah. It's using your hand to really kind of like channel all of that energy that really isn't you. It's something so much bigger and more powerful than you.
It's fascinating stuff. Really, I've got a friend that's totally into Reiki, and I mean, you can literally feel the heat and on your hands. It's just neat. What about neuro-linguistic programming?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's something you guys would be, a lot of coaches and therapists use it. It's understanding patterns, a lot of patterns that are unspoken, nonverbal, and then using, again, a lot of these might be guided visualizations to interrupt patterns, to have ourselves understand those things deeper, but understand it's like, oh, well, this is going on. So maybe it's a movement that you do, maybe it's observation and then reflecting back that observation of how those kind of verbal and nonverbal patterns are showing up. And then, using almost like mind exercises to help shift those patterns. So.
Yeah, I actually have a client who's doing some of that, to recover. What was it? She had dizzy. She's an older lady and having trouble. And so she's doing that. They're, looking at items and moving, switching eyesight and whatnot. Craig, you got to let me save time and skip mindfulness. Can I please?
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
Yeah, NLP is interesting to me. I think Tony Robbins has gotten famous or whatever using NLP. I actually read a book or started a book last year on NLP, but I'm not quite sure I'm ready for it yet. So I didn't continue, but I still have it in there. So, you mentioned EFT tapping too. So you got all these tools, and the interesting part is you're also a marriage and family therapist trained as well. How do you know what to use on somebody when they come into your office?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Occasionally somebody will come in and say like, hey, I'd like to do this thing with you, right? Like you offer this hybrid. I'm interested in that. But for me, like I am always working to kind of master my own intuition and tuning into people energetically, or just it's a flow of the conversation. It's all things, right? It's like we take in the energy consciousness of another person when we consent to like work. I mean, a lot of my clients that show up are like, it's somehow divinely guided, right? Like they want to work with me. I'm not necessarily seeking that out. And so they might not even know some of these things like you guys, but they're curious. And so they'll say, well, what is this? And for me, a lot of it, to answer your question, is something that's very intuitive because I'm constantly, I think, honing these, whether they're trainings or my own intuition, which is just frankly what I'm talking about. It's the consciousness of tuning in. Well, what do I feel? And when I ping off of this person's energy, what do they need? And so that happens through conversation, but it also just happens through being in somebody's presence, feeling their essence, right? Because we can connect across the world. I work with lots of people all over, not just in my state. And so, yeah, tuning in, like we don't have to, these are unseen things, right? But it's like, what are you guided to do, to say? It's, an exercise in that. And the deeper we get into that mindfulness part, it's like, oh, well, this is what I might feel something because I'm pretty hypersensory. So I can feel other people's energy and I might call it out. Sometimes I let it play out, but then sometimes I might say, well, what is it that you're feeling? Right? Like right now I'm feeling this, and I know it's not my energy because I'm so, not that I'm perfect at this all the time because I have to, work at it. But I know what my neutral is. I know what like my baseline when I'm feeling good, when it's my energy, like I know what that feels like. So if something comes into my space, and these are great things that we can all learn, right? It's like, oh, that's not mine. That's that person that I'm talking to. And so, and it's trying to give me a message and help me guide them to have a message, if that makes sense.
It does. And it's totally fascinating. have you ever heard of the Wonder Method? Mm-mm. So there's this thing called the Wonder Method, and I had somebody working with me on the Wonder Method, and I forget what the issue was, but basically you kind of go into this meditative state and they're kind of coaching you through it, like you're talking about.
Yep.
And she's like, well, I'm going to tune into your emotions or whatever, and seriously, I would be sitting there meditating on a topic, and I would feel a shift inside of my being, if you want to call it that.
Yes.
And she would say, I just felt that shift. And I'm like, holy shit, that is amazing.
What did you say?
Yeah, really. I mean, and it like 3 or 4 times it happened. And she's like, oh yeah, I felt that shift there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, Casey, because I think, if you're a young therapist or older therapist and whatnot, if you will, when you think of the Gestalt techniques, I mean, Gestalt is a Gestalt therapy. I mean, I've had formal training in that. I don't use it quite so much, but it's very here and now. It's very, experiential and in the moment. And there are therapy modalities that steep themselves in that. And like I said, what's so cool about, what I liked about why I really wanted to talk about you is you interweave these things, tremendously so with all of the alternative, not so traditionally understood things, which I want to get to, with the traditional science, cognitive behavioral therapy and, that type of thing. So what I want to do real quick is take a break at the midpoint here, and then I want to jump back in and get to those other things. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great.
Okay. We'll get back to the show in just a moment.
Okay.
So with the break, Craig, we've got BetterHelp.com, right? It is the show's sponsor.
Yes, BetterHelp.
What is that?
That is an online, obviously an online site. It is a website where you can go and get on an online therapist. So basically, and actually you want to go from our website. So you want to go to throughatherapisteyes.com, click on the counseling link, and then follow it through that way. But basically you give your information and betterhelp.com will line you up with a therapist, and then you can have a remote therapy session.
If you go to throughatherapisteyes.com, hit the counseling tab, it helps keep the show free for all. They are a sponsor, and that is the way to support the show, going through it that way, right?
Absolutely.
How about we get back to the show?
Can't wait.
So, Casey, I wanted to be selfish, man. I wanted to learn about these things. So let's go down through it again. Like, I know it's impossible because we can go so deep on any one of these things. I mean, it's like a total, deep dive you can do on any one of these therapy modalities or these modalities of an experience or thought. But some of them I just don't know zero about. So, comprehensive energy psychology. What is that?
Yeah, well, it's a lot.
I know, right?
It's a lot to describe, but the simplest way that I can describe it is that it uses kinesthesiology, which is also science-based, right? So it's muscle testing, it's all of that kind of stuff. That's involved in energy psychology in brief, right? I certainly don't want to dumb it down, but there's also
Please dumb it down.
So we have meridians that run through our body, right? Like we were talking about when you go to acupuncture, this is what they're accessing. So this down here is connected to that. It might be a spiritual thing. It might be an emotional thing. It might be a physical thing, yada, yada. So these are doing also, I mean, it's a very physical, like embodied practice where you can shift energy and patterns in your body and, all of those layers of your being by doing specific meridian activities that they have found, which is similar again to the EFT and tapping, but these are more physical. So you might take this position or go through these kind of what seem like odd touching of yourself. Donna Eden is the one who developed this modality, and you should go on and watch her videos if you or your fans haven't learned anything about it. And these are things, again, because I always want people to have agency, you can do at home. You can watch a YouTube video about it, or, we can, work on those things and do them together. But these are things that every one of us can do. And we all have access to this organic way that our body wants to regulate and heal. And they're just tools to get us there.
Yeah, I get that. And it's, when we talked about this, preparing and getting to know each other on the phone there, I think, I remember what you said, and I agreed with you, and I figured that was probably the case. And so I had this on my list of ones that I didn't know much about, but as you suggested to me when we talked, and as I agreed, I think we know a lot more about these things than what we realize. Because I'm kind of like listening to you and I'm like, oh yeah, well, meridian tapping. And oh yeah, well, that works with acupuncture. Well, okay. Well, yeah, the energy's the flow. And I don't know that I want anybody sticking needles and stuff in me. I've never been able to submit to an acupuncture session, but it's all there. It's all real.
Yeah, it's amazing. You should give it a try. So amazing. But I mean, these are all, and I don't practice acupuncture, but I am a prolific consumer of it. So it's just one way that we can naturally help balance our system. And it's beautiful, the ways that we can go and give that to ourselves or go and receive, because sometimes we just need to receive.
How about if, Casey, if I just go get a nice massage with a hot rock massage and whatnot and skip the needles, can we do that?
You can trust whatever works for you, but I'm telling you.
You don't actually feel the needles, right?
You can, because
okay.
They're not in a painful way, but the way I would describe it, especially when they're hitting a point that you really need, is it's almost can be like this twinge feeling, or it's like it peaks the energy there and then you don't really feel them. Or it might be that, you poke something here and you're feeling it radiating some other place in your body. Oftentimes that's the case. Or if it becomes a little sore or achy, it's like the energy is building and then it's releasing, right? But you might need to go through that intense, like, woo, why is that point on my wrist so intense or whatever? And it's because that meridian's unbalanced and it needs balancing. So
let's try to be quick with these things. I know it's impossible, but we're doing pretty well. I think we're doing pretty well, but because there's some things I wanted to ask you about the energy of 2020 and how people can protect their energies and that sort of thing. But I really wanted to get tap your brain for these things. So 5 elements of Chinese face reading. That's some training that you had. What is Chinese face reading? What is that?
Well, it's a fascinating Yeah, it's a fascinating science. And I can tell you, Jean Hanner is world renowned for teaching this. And I've done some kind of education with her and other people as well. But it's essentially looking at someone's face and reading. It's kind of like a palm reading, but more advanced than that. You can tell a lot about somebody's face and what maybe they're going through at that moment, or segments of their life, right? It's taking that in a scientific way and saying like, oh, well, these are patterns that we see with certain people's face, right? That tells us about who they are.
You kind of talk about nonverbal communication interpretation there, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's not something, it's like people aren't coming to me. I'm not, the world's expert on face reading, but I do know a lot of the, patterns from having done my training. So it's, for me, what I do with it is, again, like sometimes I would offer this, but it's really an intuitive thing. It's like, oh, I might say, oh yeah, I see that in your face. Or, if somebody wants to know, it's like, they're not coming to me exclusively for a face reading. It's kind of like this hybrid of how I might even absorb part of their essence in my understanding, so that I understand, oh, well, this is why they might be going through this, or this is something they're feeling, or this is the unconscious side of them. This is the personal side of them versus the public or professional side of them. It's like, and you can see how that shows up. And it's this imprint, right? I mean, it's this like just another way to
other information. It sounds like. Yeah. It's funny. I just had the thought bust in my head, Casey. I don't know how much you kind of talk shop with, your friends, your girlfriends, family and friends and whatever, but I'm sure that if they haven't heard you talk like this, they might get super intimidated. Like, oh my God, Craig, Casey's going to look at my face and know what's in my soul. And that's not being silly, but it is scary. And actually, that I didn't read that in your introduction. I meant to. Where did I write that? Because I thought that was cool with what you said in introducing the work that you do with this. Where was it? Shoot, I'm not going to see it now. But you were kind of like, if you're approaching this with trepidation, or just interest or intrigue, it's a safe place to be able to explore these things. Is kind of the way you put it. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah. Hopefully people experience it that way. But yeah, that's my aim.
Okay, what is shamanism? Craig, you know about the shamans?
I don't know a lot.
I thought you mentioned that before.
The only thing I know about shamans is I listen to a lot of podcasts and some of the guys I've listened to. I don't know if you know Aubrey Marcus, who has a company called Own It. Yeah. He talks about going down to the Amazon and finding a shaman to go on these ayahuasca trips. So when I think about shamanism, I relate it to psychedelic experiences.
Yeah, there are so many. I mean, I think that they are kind of ancient and modern day medicine people who, use shamanism, right? So again, it's a way to access really like the underworld, the unconscious, there's so many ways to do that, right? And culturally, there's so many different beliefs and ways that people practice that. And some of them do have to do with, plant medicine and all of that. And then there are just ways to journey, frankly. I mean, it's journeying it can be past lives. It can be other aspects of yourself. It can be hidden. It can be the dark. It's like really understanding the shadow and the light and like all of these aspects of ourselves that live there, but we are not utilizing them so often. So yes, you can access it through plant medicine. For me, I believe there's always a natural or organic way that we can access the same things. So it might just be journeying and having someone drum over you. It can be reintegrating parts. It can be so many of these, like just visiting that underworld, which is kind of this deeper, darker part of us. Like, okay, well, what comes of that? So yeah, I would say that I'm definitely like lean away from not that I'm judging or, whatever people want to do with the plant medicines, if that works for them. To me, that is, even though it's plant, it's still like an artificial way of achieving that, when I believe that we can achieve that from breath work, from, journeying, from, hypnotherapy, from frankly, just tuning into our energy system. So there are many ways that are organic and natural that you can utilize that without putting yourself through. But, some people, they have, beautiful visions and journeys doing that. And some shamans practice that way and some are more organic. So
interesting. So it doesn't have to be a psychedelic experience or plant-based medicine. Okay, cool. No. I did not know that.
And when you say plant-based medicine, what does that mean? We're talking about like Prozac and Zoloft? Are we talking about, mushrooms? Are we talking about other things in nature that we would use? Seriously, I don't know.
Yeah. So to me, prescribed medications, those are synthetic. So those are not plant-based. They're not
Right.
natural. So it's none of that. It is, plants or herbs, right? It's ayahuasca. It can be mushrooms. It can be, some of these psychedelics.
I love my echinacea.
There you go. That'll help your immune system.
Yes.
So, but, so they can help you access, I think, in an instant way. Of course, you never want to do it without, having a professional guide you through that. But, medicine men who really concoct these plant medicines so that you can have an altered experience. But I think you can also, I believe personally, you can achieve altered experience in other ways. So does that make sense? Am I answering your question?
I think so. And I got a couple more. And Craig, I think I'm going to take your advice just so the listening audience knows. I think we're going to spend another 10 minutes on this, and then we're going to go over a little bit. Are we okay on time, Casey, as far as any pressure today in the recording a little bit longer? Or is that okay? Okay, good. So Craig, the last section that we'll do is we'll talk about 2020 and a little bit of the energy that people have and how they can protect it and whatnot. But I want to not rush us. I want to stay here and kind of get these understandings a little bit, because I think it's really important. And I think, Casey, just so you know, that I think people are fascinated at this and understanding like what you were just talking about. Like when Craig and I were joking about that, right? Like since I'm going to have somebody on here talking about what is it called? Esketamine treatment, the synthetic, or, well, I guess, would that be plant-based medicine, with taking a trip basically and working with depression that way? That's not synthetic.
No.
Yeah. I have people that are fascinated about that.
Yeah. It's not plant. It is synthetic.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So a couple more then. So theta healing. What is theta healing?
Yeah, it's, again, and for me, I just have this seeking brain, right? If I've experienced something and I usually want to experience it as a client myself, then it's like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Like, I want to learn how to do that. And so it's essentially taking us, if you believe that we, live and have all of these different realms that we access, and it's taking us up through like the universal laws to connect with our higher self or our soul. And that can be through all time and space. It's very quantum, right? So it can be things from the past, and this is what is showing up in somebody's system. So it's really kind of like, I would call it like a meditation or a prayer that you kind of induce to access those parts and heal at this real quantum level. Does that make sense?
No, I'm not following this one at all yet. So really, I'm serious. And I think it's me and my understanding rather than your description. So let me try to dial into that and to understand it. So theta healing, though, I didn't pick up on what that is. I'm thinking like theta brain waves or theta, like I didn't follow. Can you try again for me? The other ones I totally did, but I have no idea what theta healing would refer to.
Well, I mean, and you're so in tune to access like that theta brain wave, and that is what we're accessing. And then we're moving through different parts of, again, the psyche, the body, the spirit, all of these different, and it sounds a little more maybe esoteric or ethereal, and it is, but it's also tuning into your energy system. And we're accessing, again, through this kind of meditative process where, instead of maybe in the shamanism, we might go to the underworld. Well, here we're going to like up into the infinite, right? And we're then connecting in that place and able to do healing because we're in that theta brainwave. Like we induce the theta brainwave in someone, same as we do when we're listening to sound healing or sound bowls or anything like that, right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think, because honestly, when we're talking about shamanism and the Chinese face reading and comprehensive energy psychology, I'm totally following you and whatnot. And honestly, with theta healing, I'm not terribly so much. And I think I'm going to wonder out loud why, because this goes back to what I said, actually, I think a little bit earlier today in the show, I said about the neurology. Like when you're talking about brain waves, when you're talking about, we had an excellent, I think you would really enjoy, Casey, the show we did on sleep. We did a part 1 and a part 2 with a gentleman who worked his whole career as a sleep doctor. It was fascinating to talk to him, right? Like we don't know or understand theta brainwaves. Like we do not, I think, have very much of an understanding of neurology. We don't we know maybe kind of what works because these guys and gals back in the Chinese Far East ever years ago, centuries and decades ago, knew what works, and we still want to do those. And I think science is going to be catching up to that, right? So I wonder if part of what I'm struggling with in real time talking to you is we don't understand neurology. We don't understand brave winks, but we know kind of what works. Does that make sense when we talk about theta psychology and theta healing and brain waves?
Well, sometimes, I'm curious too, like it's, I mean, I think there is a lot we do know and we can experience, right? Theta is what we experience when we're going. I mean, it puts us into this subliminal, like, before dreaming, during, it's like, it's that part of our brain that is so relaxed that we can focus more. And so we can do this with sound baths. We can do this with theta healing. We can do this in, I mean, many states, probably, hypnotherapy and all of those are theta brainwave. You're accessing, this slower, deeper part of you that is completely surrendered. And so from that place, right, messages can come through, whether they're, if you're the client and you're receiving it, or even frankly for the practitioner, because you've gone into this deeper place.
And you just mentioned the word surrender, and I feel like that stuck out to me a little bit.
Yeah. It's what it is. It's where we are more surrendered. We are more uninhibited. We are more, like our defenses are dropped. And so, those normal patterns, and we can see and access them, whether we're the one doing it ourselves or whether it's our practitioner guiding us through that. And, and a person like me is like you were describing, Craig, with your healer, who sounds amazing, can actually tune in and feel that from other people. So, and we all have access to that. We're just not always conscious of it. We're not allowing that. We might have different constitutions, all of that. Does that make sense? More sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally with you now. And what's funny, it occurs to me as I was listening to you there, it occurred to me that, and I think this is the answer to my own question I'm about to kind of pose is the answer to the question that I haven't asked yet is like, you have to be in tune to know when to do this and when to not. Because my question is sometimes, you don't want those defenses to be down. You don't want to be vulnerable. You don't want to be, unsafe. I mean, there has to be some discernment, in preserving self and not being open. Like you don't want to just open yourself to, because sometimes you open yourself to some very dangerous things. Does that make sense?
It makes all the sense in the world. And so this is not just, what I would say is even that is a message. And so maybe that is a message that's it's expanding, right? It's amplifying, I should say, inside of you, like, ooh, not like I'm scared now. So then there's a layer way before that, or this isn't safe, or I don't feel comfortable here. So then I would want to get information even from that. And you're, like I said, you're doing these things. You're just maybe not aware that it's like,
right.
Oh, well, this is telling me which direction to go, where to expand, where to contract, where to remove myself. Like we have that deep intuition in us. And what I am suggesting is to make it more conscious so that, yes, exactly. I mean, if it doesn't feel safe, I mean, nobody ever, and I guide my sessions in this way, nobody goes further in their healing than they are ready to go. It's should just be something that frankly, as like an impeccable healer would hold that presence and for themselves and for their client, right? Just to achieve the next level, the next highest level of healing that they are ready to receive at that moment. And that might be, frankly, like self-regulating. That might be listening to the messages that you're getting and knowing like, ooh, I'm too scared to do this. Okay, well, is that a trauma? Is that a block? Is that some part of you that isn't completely regulated and so getting wise and in tune with that, even so that we know, okay, well, do we proceed, but do it with caution or listening? It's really listening and understanding, which you, I promise, are doing in your practice and, you as well, Craig, but just, yeah, it's really...
Well, I think, to take some of the mystery out of it, like I've talked to young therapists and I love to make this point when I'm doing, supervision or, training on, how to do therapy and whatnot. And Craig, I think as a lot of the coaching stuff goes, when you're learning, like, what do I do when I sit with somebody? It's really like one of the things that makes therapy work best is rapport development, connection, and just being with a person in that space that becomes safe. Like, people do not realize how powerful that is. Like, that is something that somebody may never experience in their life,
right,
until they sit down with you for the first time. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's that parallel process, right? Of like experiencing something that we feel, oh, I feel safe, or I can soften, or I can relax here, or it's that, I mean, it is everything. So to not have that rapport, that safety, which sometimes takes time, and some people's nervous systems are more damaged and they need more of that building and attuning to you. But we offer that as a parallel process. So then they can, as you know, right, bring that out into their world, and it becomes this echo chamber that they experience with you as a healer, as a therapist, as whatever you want to call yourself. But I think all therapists, you know, fall into that category of healer, you know, so it's everything.
Yeah, I think, it's disarmament and being able to kind of get at things. I mean, I use humor a lot. You can tell on the show a little bit. I think I'm funny at least a moment or two every now and again. But I do. I tell people, like, I want to laugh in therapy. If you're in therapy with me, at some point you're probably going to laugh. That's just the way we're going to roll. Because I think there's a disarmament that goes with that, and a beginning to get comfortable in a safe space, to be able to deal with things that oftentimes people have never even revealed to another human being. Like, that's a big deal.
It's a big honor. Yeah. And so
Huge.
Really, holding it. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're doing a beautiful job of it, and that it really is everything, because people, I mean, this is why, and I tend to practice more experientially, right? You probably get that sense by now, just therapeutically, right? But it is just something that we can offer, like in that moment. And what is this person's nervous system feeling from me, and challenging them on that maybe, or just allowing them to have time. And again, I think it's I'm sure both of you are already doing that, right? Attuning to like, okay, well, what's the pace, and what do I need to do? Or do I need to throw this little joke in here? What would be disarming to them? Would it be telling them a story about myself, or telling them, like how do we do that? There's so many ways to do that, but just kind of tracking somebody's energy and what they need and where they're at, right? And we meet them there. That's our job.
So let's finish up this segment, and then I want to do for the audience, so that we'll spend another little bit of time, not a huge amount of time, but want to talk about the energies of 2020 and how people can protect their energies and kind of go with that in 2021. But before we do that, finishing up this section, I wanted to ask about auras. Okay, so I was curious, because you kind of have done some trainings, Casey, and you're kind of a little bit, obviously, a whole lot more in tune with a lot of those things from so many different, alternative energy medicine practices. And I wanted to be curious about what you see with this. And the quick story that I want to tell is actually from way early in my career. So I'm not breaking confidentiality in any regard when I talk about somebody who was working with me in therapy. And I'm green now at this point. Like, I'm new blue, and I'm doing therapy like very early on in my career. And this dude like starts talking about, like, in session, this stuff, I think now looking looking at it in hindsight.
Yes.
And so he was looking at auras, and he launched into a thing, and he really appreciated working with me, first off. And if I recall correctly, it was a primary substance abuse issues and whatnot, but he also had some other things going on. I'll put it that way, because I don't know what they were. And he started talking about my aura, and he was like, Chris, I really like working with you, and I like talking to you, and I know I should be listening to things that you're saying, but I see your aura, and there's different colors and stuff, but it's primarily purple. But I see holes in the aura, and you need to work at closing those up, and managing life and everything. But you're really cool, and I really appreciate talking. But and he went on a little bit longer, and I was like, whoa. At the end of that session, I was like, what just happened? What was just read in my spirit world or whatever? But so that's the story this is coming from. And I enjoyed thinking about that before. And I guess I think he told me, the color purple is a very good color, particularly. It means you're passionate. It means that you care. So he went on a little bit longer than just kind of recalling that. But that being said, what do you see with aura? Is that a part of all of this stuff? And so what is all that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love that story. I mean, it sounds like you got a session that day, not him. So
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. I was like, what?
Yeah. so many people, I mean, I believe this, like we are all intuitive and we all have access to that. Some people, you know, I mean, that's how that shows up for them, that they see color or they might see picture. It's very visual, you know, these kind of ways of our intuition flowing through us. For me, it's more of like a clairsentience. I start to build and see people or see things or get pictures of things when I'm working. And it's kind of like that channel that it's like, okay, we've consented to work together. And so you're opening your energy consciousness to me. And so then, you know, when something wants to drop in, you know, like information that I'm not seeing, you know, in the real here and now, right? Then, you know, sometimes I share it and sometimes I just kind of take it in and like as information. So I love, but some people are so gifted. It's like all they see are these images and it's not, you know, necessarily something that's mentally off about. It might be that they're so expanded and open, right? I mean, to me, that shows that his upper chakras are probably very, like his third eye and his crown are probably so.
What did you say? His upper chompers and his third eye, what?
You're cracking me up. His upper chakra.
I do that sometimes, I gotta say. But what was that, seriously?
Yeah, so I mean, our chakras are our energy system. That
chakra. I didn't hear you correctly. I gotcha. I know what those are. I've heard chakras.
Okay, good. Yeah. So it's our energy system, just like we have a skeletal system or an endocrine system or whatever, it's our energy system that's running through our body. And even as you describe him, it feels like, okay, well, he's probably somebody who is really in his higher chakras, right? Like the top two, right? Living there. And so he's able to see, right? He might even have, you know, it sounds like he has this real beauty of sight. And so taking that in, I mean, for me, I'm not like reading people's auras, but I can get information. That's not necessarily something that I, you know, advertise that I do, but it's how do we gather the information, people, places, spaces, things, like how do we receive that and understand that everything is an energy body, you know, everything. So we can tune in and understand it in a deeper way. And some people have these profound gifts to do that.
That's neat. That's really fascinating. Yeah, Craig, I don't want that guy back in therapy now. It's been years now. You might see just like all the purple's gone and now it's nothing but like red and coarse orange and flaming things coming from my ears or something, right? It's a little different.
Yeah, I mean, so that you have a concept of this, we all have an energy aura that surrounds us. That's to most people invisible, right? But
right.
What is your auric field? And so people show up with different colors. You can go onto my Instagram and see, and I've had my aura photographed before a couple of times.
Really?
Yeah, there's places you can do this. And so it will show you kind of what's around you. And it's the electromagnetic frequency that they measure. It's not from a picture. It's like they measure in your field. And so you can see the colors and how they change and how our auras can change. And we do that by frankly having good spiritual hygiene, good energy hygiene, where we're clearing out, like he was saying, here's a black hole, or here's this, or here's this opening. Like at that time in your life, you might have been mostly purple, but you were having, maybe he was able to read the blocks, or they can be people in our field. They can just be thoughts or memories or whatever that we hold. And if they're inside of our field and they're good for us or not good for us, like we can understand more about that. So I hope that's useful.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think did we all just try to run? She found it. That's cool. So that's her aura that she was just talking about?
Yeah.
Let me see that. Holy cow.
That's it, Casey? That's awesome.
You said that, and I think all of our fingers went to our computer to find it. And of course, there's no way I was going to find it. So what is that? I'm looking at a picture of your aura then?
Yeah, that's my aura. And to give some contrast, like when I went and did that, I went with my mom, and her aura had so many colors. She had a ton of green in hers. And I actually have done it twice now. And my aura was pretty similar, but it did shift between. So, I mean, it's just this way, which again, is scientific. It's tracking the electromagnetic field that is in and around you. And what do one side, like your left side, I believe is your unconscious. I mean, it is anyway in the way that I track things, but I think around you, you're looking, so it's reversed. So it's like your conscious versus your unconscious. It's understanding what that particular aura at that time, right? We could be going through a major transition in our life and our aura might be red, or we might just have this core aura. So it's understanding again, like, okay, well, what's the meaning of this? The left side is different than the right. The upper is different than the lower. People just have so many cool things that you can read and understand. Again, like I said, I went with my mom same day. We took pictures 10 seconds apart and her aura looked completely different than mine, right?
So how do you take a picture of your aura? I'm intrigued. I got to know.
Well, I mean, this particular outfit that I went to, I don't know. I know there's other places that do it, but you really go inside this cone. It's kind of like a dome where I went, and you sit in there, and then you put your hand on something that can measure your electromagnetic field. Just one hand, and it's for a few seconds, and then they snap the picture. But you're almost, I want to say it's like an insulated. It looks like an igloo, the place that I've been to, and then. So you're not receiving any, in other words, you go into this and then they snap your picture, but nobody else's aura or energy is in that field. It's just yours. So it can bounce off. It's pinging off. Right. And then there was a pad that I put my hand on, and they could read that, as you know, it tunes in on a deeper level. So it's fascinating. You guys should see if there's anybody that does it around you.
Yeah, I'm going to look it up for sure.
Dude, Craig, we got to go do that, man. Let's go do that. Seriously.
Yeah, we'll look it up.
We got to do that, man. I got to have that happen. He's writing it down. That's cool. We're going to go do that. So, okay. We are running on time, and it's fine.
Well, you can't skip the breath work.
No, that's, okay. Well, what do you mean skip it? Did we? Oh, no, you're right. That's true. Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess I kind of felt we've been talking about it, but go ahead, Craig. Yeah, knock it out, and then we'll go to 2020.
I noticed that you had transpersonal breath work written on here, and I just kind of wanted to see what that was all about.
Yeah. Well, have either of you ever done a breathwork journey?
What is a breathwork journey?
That'd be no.
You probably haven't done it. It's a beautiful way. I mean, there's different kinds of breath work. I actually believe, I mean, this is our life force. This is our prana. This is our, like, what fuels us life. And it's natural, it's organic. We all have access to this. So it could be as simple as like learning this isn't a breathwork journey, but I'm just talking about, I don't know if you guys coach and offer guidance through, it's like, okay, well, we might just need to breathe deeper. Like, are we shallow breathing, right? Is this where we're breathing? So there's like somatic reintegration where we can take and notice where our breath goes, where there's flow in our body, frankly. And these are just, again, these are exercises and experiences people can have in real time, and they can take them home and do them if they're up at night and they're in a trauma spiral, or they're having anxiety or panic or whatever. These are really beautiful things like the somatic reintegration breath work that you can just learn. I mean, it's literally this is an oversimplification, right? But it's like taking your hands and noticing like, okay, where am I breathing? Where does it stop? Okay, it stops right here. So then I'm going to move down, and I kind of use these 3 segments of the body, right? Like here, kind of maybe under the breastbone, and then on your low abdomen. And so then going through and really pushing your breath mindfully to that one place. And then when you add in the somatic reintegration, I might ask somebody, okay, put your hands on the place that it's easiest to breathe. So that might be maybe your high heart. And so just breathe, and your eyes are closed, and you're kind of in your body, you're in this somatic experience. And then you tell them to think of a happy memory. And again, something just will drop in. And so then breathe through and play that out. It's like playing the tape through in your mind, right? So okay, so I played that out. And then what I asked them to do is tune in to where they were having the hardest time breathing. And that might be maybe their low belly, right? So then to move your hands, and this is all with your eyes closed, move your hands down to that space, and then, kind of get a cycle of breathing. And then you play through the same memory. You would ask them to play through the same memory. And you might do several cycles of this really to like lower the nervous system and get you back into like rest and digest, right? To feel your vagus nerve, like doing all of those things that are calm and peaceful and giving you kind of that inner stillness, right? But when we imprint the memory into a place that was blocked, right? Like our life force was blocked, say in our low belly. And so we're reintegrating and bringing integrating that memory into that part of ourselves so that there's more flow, frankly, in our breath, which is healing, right? I mean, this is life, but breath is life. And so that's somatic reintegration. And then you might go through and every time they might get the same memory, or they might get a different memory, so that you're pretty much balancing out all of the sections of your core, right? So breathwork journeys, there are so many different modalities of breathwork. Breathwork journeys are, you're usually breathing for an hour and a half to usually around an hour and a half. Like you might have 2 hours of just setting up and displaying, but you go and it's like, you can do it in your home. You can do it in your bed. It's deeply breathing. So the exhalation, you're having twice as much exhalation as you are inhalation. And it's like you get to get high on your own supply from doing these journeys, right? So it might take you to this very lucid place where, again, you're accessing your unconscious, because we have deoxygenated. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It feels like
I'm still stuck on getting high on your own supply. That's what I love there. Deoxygenate, you meant.
Yes, yes, thank you. You're saying that better than me. Our body, but we're still like, I mean, we can get kind of almost this rigor in our hands. We can feel traumas that come up. For everyone, their journey is different. And you're usually listening to it with like really like just loud music. You're screaming, you're integrating. It's like, oh, is my voice blocked? Am I crying? Am I remembering this trauma because I've accessed this other part of me that it's like taking plant medicine, but it's deeply healing because you can move through and really like it's not talk therapy. We are guided and told like, oh, we'll do this or then do this or scream or like whatever you need to do at different segments of the breath work of the journey, right? But for everyone it's a personal journey because we all have our different psyches and nervous systems and things that we need to heal. So it's an incredible way to do that. It's pulling things out of the body because everything we know is lives in the body if it's hidden or showing up in some way. So
there was some really neat stuff that we did in the Gestalt training. I mean, I was in college actually when I did it. It was like 6 to 8 hour days, like 5 or 6 Saturdays in a row. It was stupid cool. I mean, the here and now, and and the breathing and that's always been my favorite part is being able to know I could take my anxiety down levels by taking breath down into my abdomen and diaphragm. And I know that because I was a trumpet player in high school. I think it kind of set it up to where I could do that kind of stuff and it was fun. But no, Craig, I think, dude, I know you're going to agree with me here, man. Craig, all this healing and stuff, man, I'm getting myself some Xanax. I'm going to the psychiatrist. I'm going to pop some Prozac, some Paxil, some Luvox. I'm going to go drink some beer, watch the Steelers, and actually be fine. Don't you think that's a good plan?
I'm not surprised.
Oh no, seriously, it is. What's that, Craig?
I'm not surprised.
No, it is absolutely really cool. And I think to summarize all of that is to say, as I said, you're pulling an amazing combination of, traditional behavioral practices, cognitive and behavioral theories. You're looking at emotion focused therapy and concepts of mindfulness and pulling that together with, chakras and shamanism and paying attention to your body and energy healing. I mean, Kate, you're a cool package, I must say.
Well, thank you. Likewise. Yeah, I love doing it. I mean, I really believe I have no judgment if somebody is in the place where they need to, drink beer and take meds, do all of these things. Like I have no judgment of that because we all just are where we are. But I truly believe that there are natural, holistic, organic ways to heal. And when we tune into that and then provide, act accordingly with that, right? We're mindful about the messages that we're getting. It's like, I know that it's possible.
Yeah, I think honestly to summarize this up and to put a bow tie on this, and then I want to ask you about the energies of 2020 and how to protect them and stuff. But I think as with therapy, traditional and sometimes even like religion, like going to your pastor or whatever modality of wellness, or actually just frankly going to your gynecologist or your doctor, people are afraid. They're uncomfortable to explore what's going on in a real and genuine way. And I think I just want to encourage, the listening audience out there to reach out, check it out. This is not frou-frou weird stuff that's going to be creepily messing into your head. This is reaching out and being aware of, alternative ways and multiple ways to be well. Does that make sense? Yeah. Is that oversimplified?
No, I mean, I think it's all, and, even that, if someone's afraid, right, that might be the starting point is okay, looking at that fear, understanding what that is and what's a way that you can become more comfortable with that. Do you go watch something on the computer? I mean, there's a lot of these things. What I want to is, cycle my people out so they have healing experiences and they know how to regulate their system in a multitude of ways. And some of the things, right, even this is my sense for you with the theta healing, that might not be your thing and you might not get it and you might not like it, but there is something else on the list that you can do for yourself, whether they're the things I'm talking about or they are just knowing what our constitution needs to feel regulated. Where do we expand and where do we contract? Where do we feel better? Where do we come back to baseline? Does breathing do that for you? Great. Does walking do that for you? Great. Does meditating or doing yoga or doing jiu-jitsu, like, great. Like, everyone's different. We all come from different places. And so honoring what works for you.
So here's what you said on your website a while ago that I couldn't find it, and I was able to track back. Whether you find yourself approaching energy medicine with excitement or trepidation, know that you have a safe place with me to begin or continue your healing journey. And by the way, we'll get this all in the show notes and everything, but we want to promote the way to find you is shrinkbigger.com, right?
Yeah, that's where I live.
SHRINK bigger.com. So yeah, check her stuff out, audience. I think you guys are going to like some of the stuff that she's talking about. Let's do our last little segment here on 2020. You know, we did a show last week about 2020 actually having created hope. What a novel concept I was pushing. Not was it just full of despair and destruction and terrible world events and all that kind of stuff. It was a tough year. It was definitely a tough year for a lot and in a lot of ways. But let's spend a couple minutes on 2020, moving towards 2021. Like, I'm curious how you protect your energy. You know, how you can kind of exercise your internal locus of control in moving through the new year and the holidays and the election and all of the world realities. I mean, they make an impact on us, you know, they make an impact on how we're feeling and how we're doing in our subconscious mind and in our chakras, in our energy. What would you say about that? How has the 2020 affected the society or cultural in a bigger perspective, and what can we look out for moving into 2021 to be prepared?
Well, that's a big question. I'll try to do it justice. What I would say is, for me, and this is again maybe it's a unique lens, but it is my lens that I come from, is I really think this last year, I believe it has been an opportunity to amplify in us, right? So wherever it touched you, to amplify in us where there might be still some wounding, some fear, some lack, some unproductive patterns, some just fragility because we're not maybe solid. And so whatever flashed for, and this is intrinsic to each human being, right? Even though certainly there are themes and patterns, but whatever flashed for you that might have felt like, oh my gosh, this is a shock, and oh my gosh, this really hard thing happened, or this is devastating, or whatever. After that kind of initial reaction that might, you know, is normal maybe to go through considering the extreme circumstances, what I think can happen is we can slow down and then choose to respond. Like, what has this amplified in me, in my life, in my circumstances? And where is the opportunity to amplify something or heal this lack or heal this victimhood or heal this? And I don't mean to say that people aren't, you know, victimized by things, but it's really, what do you choose to do with that when you become more conscious of it? And so I think it's been just this amazing, again, kind of container to reflect that back. My personal belief, to reflect that back, even if they're really hard things, that wherever this has touched each person in their life, I would ask people, invite them to examine that more deeply so that moving forward, right, we are not, again, reacting, but we're responding. We can choose to do this tiny thing for ourselves that might be free, or we can get that healing we've always wanted, or we can change our perspective in the way that we're thinking like, oh man, I'm feeling victimized by this, but frankly, has that narrative of being a victim been running rampant in my life for a long time? And this is just, so it's exacerbated right now. And I see that as an opportunity to really heal and know, wow, we can take our power back. We are powerful. We are responsible. Like, there is no outsourcing, I believe, of our, you know, responsibility. There's no outsourcing of our energy, right? Of our lives. We can't outsource that. We have to internalize that. And we get to choose, is that going to be in a way that is, again, you know, contracting and making things worse, or is it expanding into parts where we can truly thrive and feel more whole and healed and healthy?
That's cool. Have you? Yeah, boy, a lot. Like you said, I know it was a pretty broad and deep question. And that's a pretty broad and
Did I
deep
answer
answer to unpack, right? I guess I'll just say this, right? Like, have you had in sessions? I mean, because I know, Casey, I've been having a lot of conversation about the election and the pandemic, and people have been, I mean, they've been stressed out. Anxieties are up, depression's up, suicide's up. I mean, substance abuse is up, addictions issues. I mean, oh man, marital stress and strangle. I mean, there's so much going on. And I'm curious what you have found, if it's similar to mine. Like, I have springboarded, is the phrase I use, from those conversations, which I've been having a lot with people, into our lives and the chronic patterns that we have. I mean, has all this world event stuff come up in your sessions, I guess, is the simple question. Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
because everything's connected, really. Like, we cannot, even if we are inside this container, we can't escape it. It's intersecting with our lives in some way. But what I try to coach people, and again, it might be unpopular, but it's really about accountability. But it's like, okay, well, if this is coming up, if I mean, we could look at any one of those things and say, well, kind of which path are you choosing? Are you compounding your, like, there might be something traumatic happening, there might be something stressful happening, but are you allowing that to compound these beliefs or these limitations or these struggles that you already have, right? If you're feeling like a victim or you're feeling anxious already, should you turn on the news and watch 6 hours?
No.
Like, probably not. So it's, how do we read even these simple things and know, like, okay, I want to make a conscious decision to truly evolve and grow in a bigger way. And I can listen to these signs around me, or it's like, man, maybe I'm really struggling financially, or whatever it is. It's like, how do I look at how lack might have been in my life for a long time, and really challenge? And I know that, like, it can almost feel harsh, but for me, it's all about evolving, as each individual evolving and challenging these parts of ourselves. Is like, wow, maybe that wasn't as solid as I thought, or maybe I was very insecure in this way. Or how do we challenge so that we can interrupt those patterns? Because if we do what we did, we're going to get what we got, right? Like, so we have to find a new way of doing something, even if this is a new time and a new system that we're living in. Like, okay, well, it's not about that. I mean, we always talk about in therapy, I think, I don't know, I do like patterns and process versus like content and details, right? So the content and details, of course it matters. It matters to each of us individually, but the content doesn't matter as much as the pattern. And do we have a pattern of falling into lack, or do we have a pattern of self-abuse, or do we have a pattern of, numbing out when we have something challenging going on? And what I want to do is interrupt those patterns and say, well,
how do we want to create new patterns? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what would you like to do now? Like, this is being amplified. You have this shitty thing happen in your life. I hope I can swear. It's like, you have this thing going on in your life, but what do you want to do with it? How do you orient yourself around it so that there is more harmony and you truly can, like, move past that lesson, right? Like, move past it. So that's the way I operate. And that's the way I work with a lot of people to operate. So.
It's really, really cool. I very much, Casey, appreciate you coming on and sharing, your trainings with alternative energy medicine and the different things that you use. I think it's been kind of really totally fascinating. Absolutely. Craig, anything you're thinking about? Where do you got going on in your brain?
I'm just going to say the same thing. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been really cool. Thank you for coming on with us.
Yeah, this is my favorite thing, is really like talking to people who may not quite understand, but they're curious, they're interested, and they're interesting. And those are the people you want around you in your life. So
they're interested and they're interesting. That's cool. Listen, shrinkbigger.com is how you're going to find Miss Casey. What would you like people to know, and how to find you, and summarizing anything that we didn't ask about? Let's kind of taxi in here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you did a beautiful job. If you want to connect with me, you can certainly visit my website and see if truly tune in. Does it resonate with you? Are you curious? And other than that, I'm just so happy to have these conversations and really, like, share impact with you and with your listeners. So it's a privilege, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you finding us on Through a Therapist's Eyes, Craig. She was looking around and kind of I think her assistant found some things. Share the show with the friends up in Washington. I feel like I got to come up and see you in Gottman's, man. She's right down from the love tank in Gottman's world. That's awesome. I got to come up to Seattle and, and check out that you guys got big wood trees, I think, and big woodens. I could be out with nature with you for sure out there, right?
It's beautiful here.
What is it? The big red oak trees, or what am I talking? Is that what I'm talking about?
You mean the redwood forest?
The redwood forest. Thank you, Craig.
California, though, I think.
Well, that's pretty close to Seattle.
Yeah.
I could probably make it there from here. Well, listen. Go ahead. What's that?
Green here. Green. We're green here.
Oh, gotcha. We're green there. So, all right. Well, guys, check her out at shrinkbigger.com. I hope that you've gotten a little bit of an understanding about some of the energies, how to manage yours. And if anything else, just to be kind of aware of the tough time that we've had in 2021. This is the second show in 2021, man. We're looking forward to launching through this year with you. Casey, we thank you again for joining us. Check out the show notes and check out more of her information. And Craig, we got to definitely go get our Aura's pictures taken. You down with that, right?
Look that up. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, we're going soon, guys. We'll see you next week.